In a recent video, we discussed the Mandalorians' history of service with the Sith, and in it, we mentioned that the Mandalorians had actually allied with the Jedi at certain parts of their history. In fact, the Mandalorians spent much more time allied with the Jedi than with the Sith, despite the fact that their ideology was decidedly dark side adjacent. This might come off as a surprise, especially when you consider the fact that the Mandalorians had a long-standing rivalry with the Jedi, but they had their reasons, and in this video, we'll be explaining them.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In 3960 BBY, the Mandalorians were all but destroyed. In the Battle of Malachor V, the final battle of the Mandalorian Wars, the last fleet of the Mandalorians was utterly annihilated. Mandalore the Ultimate was killed, and the Mandalorian clans were forcibly disarmed and stripped of their armor and war droids by Revan. Revan even took Mandalore's mask and hid it on the planet of Rekiad, preventing the Mandalorians from choosing a new leader. Because of this, for the next few years, the Mandalorians remained scattered, fighting each other as much as they fought others, reduced to mercenaries and thugs raiding backwater worlds. But after the Jedi Civil War, a new Mandalore emerged. He called himself Mandalore the Preserver, and he began to rebuild the might of the Mandalorians, beginning with his own clan, Clan Ordo. Formerly, he had been known as Canderous Ordo, and though his new followers didn't know it, he'd actually been handpicked by Revan for the job. At the end of the Jedi Civil War, Canderous had travelled with Revan during the quest for the Starforge, and before Revan went off to fight the true Sith, he had given Mandalore's mask to Canderous, tasking him with the rebuilding of the Mandalorians as a bulwark against the threat of the Sith. Mandalore the Preserver followed his orders. He rebuilt Clan Ordo on Duxon, and in 3951 BBY, when the Sith Triumvirate threatened to destabilize the galaxy, he joined the fight against them. As part of this, he did something no Mandalore before him had ever done. He allied with the Jedi. During the fight against the Triumvirate, Meetra Surik, the Jedi exile, came to Duxon, and Mandalore personally joined her on her quest to find the lost Jedi, the remaining masters of the Jedi Order, to recruit them for the fight against the Sith. And when the last battles between the Republic, the Jedi, and the Sith Triumvirate began, the Mandalorians played a decisive role in turning the tide in the Jedi's favor. In the Battle of Telos IV, in which Surik and her Jedi apprentices battled the Sith forces of Darth Nihilus, Mandalore and Clan Ordo joined them. In that climactic battle, the Mandalorians led the assault on the Ravager, Nihilus's flagship, boarding the vessel and sabotaging it from the inside. Mandalore himself joined Surik in the battle with Nihilus himself, fighting the Eater of Worlds himself face to face like the Gigachad he was. He then accompanied Surik and her apprentices to Malachor V, where they destroyed the last remnants of the Sith Triumvirate. All of this was a striking reversal of the Mandalorians' role in galactic history up to that point. Before, they had been raiders on the fringe of the Republic, servants of Exar Kun's Sith, and had gone to war against the Republic and the Jedi in the hope of destroying them both. Now, the Mandalorians fought against the Sith, and beyond that, they were actively working to make sure the Jedi Order survived. But Mandalore had his reasons, as he explained to Meetra Surik.
The Sith aren't known for sharing power. If the Jedi Order is destroyed for good, it's inevitable that the Sith will dominate the Republic, and then my people will be eradicated or enslaved. Helping your cause is a matter of necessity. Mandalorians helped Exar Kun during his war. We know firsthand how we'd fare in the service of their light.
He explained how he came to this conclusion much later, after the defeat of Darth Nihilus aboard the Ravager. As he told Surik and Visas Ma when Revan gave him Mandalore's mask, he had told Mandalore a terrible truth that completely changed his perception of the Mandalorians' recent history.
Do you know what he told me in those last days on the Outer Rim? That the Mandalorian Wars were our doom, and that we had been deceived, that it had never been our decision to wage war on the Republic. Revan said the Mandalorians didn't invade the Republic space 10 years ago because it was our choice. We were tricked. Our entire people sacrificed as pawns, and never knew it. He said,
the true Sith had manipulated the Mandalorians into starting the Mandalorian Wars, hoping they would destroy themselves and cripple the Republic. Mandalore, like many Mandalorians, was already suspicious of the Sith due to his experiences in the Jedi Civil War and knowledge of how the Mandalorians fared in the Great Sith War. But this revelation showed him the true threat the Sith posed. It convinced him that the Sith had to be stopped at all costs if the Mandalorians were to even survive as a people. And as he came to understand, that meant ensuring the survival of the Jedi Order. Now, let's be clear, the Mandalorians didn't like the Jedi any more than they liked the Sith. Many Mandalorians hated the Jedi for their role in defeating them in the Mandalorian Wars, and even those who didn't saw the Jedi as weak due to their aversion to war. Mandalore, for his part, tried to teach his followers to be above that sort of pettiness, as the Mandalorian codes demanded respect for any opponent that could beat the Mandalorians in battle. Even he had little love for the Jedi, however, and wasn't terribly enthused about trying to keep their order alive. But as he saw it, there was no other choice. Either the Sith would dominate the galaxy, or the Jedi would, as Mandalore understood, and if keeping the Mandalorians' sworn rivals strong was what it took to stop the Sith, it was what he believed had to be done. Thus, so long as the Sith threatened the galaxy, Mandalore believed that the Mandalorians would have to ally with the Jedi, and even though future Mandalores believed in this a lot less than Canderous had, this idea survived millennia, leading the Mandalorians to ally with the Jedi in another devastating conflict with the Sith. From 2000 to 1000 BBY, the galaxy was consumed by the new Sith Wars, a series of conflicts between the Republic and a series of scattered Sith splinter factions collectively known as the New Sith. As the new Sith Wars went on, the Republic steadily collapsed in on itself. By the end of the conflict, it had all but ceased to exist. Thus, the Jedi were the primary opponents of the Sith during this conflict. Well, apart from the Sith themselves, who were their own worst enemy for pretty much the full 1,000 years. But despite the complete inability of the Republic to do anything useful against the Sith, the Jedi weren't on their own in the fight against the dark side. For most of the new Sith Wars, they had the Mandalorians fighting with them. At first, the Mandalorians stayed out of the new Sith Wars, but this changed somewhere around 1750 BBY during the war with a Sith Lord known to history as the Dark Underlord. During this war, Jedi forces were led by Master Murtagh, who took it upon himself to recruit the Mandalorians into the fight against the Sith. How did he plan to accomplish this, you may ask? Put simply, Murtagh visited the reigning Mandalore and offered him a ton of money for his services. This plan worked. The Mandalorians accepted the contract and went to war with the Dark Underlord, almost single-handedly winning the crucial battle of Malrev 4 for the Jedi. Of course, this wasn't the end of the new Sith Wars, as after defeating the Dark Underlord, Master Murtagh himself fell to the dark side and formed his own new Sith faction, and the fight continued. But the Mandalorians continued to fight alongside the Jedi, helping them put down new Sith cult after new Sith cult. This may have been a mistake, however. The new Sith Wars, as we mentioned earlier, lasted 1,000 years, and the centuries of fighting killed a huge portion of the Mandalorian population. After the Battle of Mizra in 1466 BBY, the Republic ceased to exist outside of the Greater Core and a few isolated regions, and not even the Mandalorians could turn the tide back against the Sith. Their numbers diminished, especially after an outbreak of the Kandorian Plague that decimated their population further. The Mandalorians, like the Republic, ended up barely surviving the new Sith Wars. But they did survive, and they did so without betraying the Jedi or allying with the Sith. By this point, you might be wondering why the Mandalorians of the modern era of the Star Wars universe were back to preferring the Sith over the Jedi. The answer is simple, if tragic. The Mandalorian Excision of 738 BBY. After the new Sith Wars, the Mandalorians rebuilt and went through a revival period which came with the rise in Mandalorian militancy. The Republic was alarmed by this, fearing that a second round of Mandalorian wars were on the horizon. So, the Republic struck first. In a quick but devastating offensive, the Judicial Forces carried out a preemptive assault on Mandalorian space, bombing parts of Mandalore and several other worlds into deserts of white sand. The Mandalorians were disarmed, and the Republic helped install new Mandalorians, the pacifist faction later led by Duchess Satine as the new government of the region. This indefensible crime turned those Mandalorians who still clung to the old ways against the Republic and the Jedi once more. In summary, Mandalore the Preserver is the Star Wars universe's biggest Gigachad, and Clan Ordo is the best Mandalorian clan. But what do you think? Are there other parts of Mandalorian history you'd like us to discuss? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.